The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome to Board Gamers Anonymous, the podcast where everyone's welcome to the table, but of course, as always, no one knows whose turn it is. This is Chris.
And this is Will.
And this is episode 553, Dice, Defiance, and the Tabletop Revolution. We like to thank all our Patreon backers for helping us bring you a brand new episode. Hey friends, we are so glad to be back with you again this week. Anthony's not here, but we brought on our good friend Will. Hey, Will, how's it going?
Going pretty well. How about yourself?
We're doing so well. So glad to have you here. It's been a while. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I was trying to think of when the last time was, and it all felt like a very long time ago.
You've done several episodes with us. They've been the top-rated episodes. People have been asking for you to come back. They're like, we've got enough Chris. Can he just not for one episode and just will it? Just bring a Will in just to, out of the bullpen, just to, save the day and stuff. Mix it up a little
Chris
bit.
Guy.
Bring some charm, bring some class.
This Chris guy, he has a podcast, and yeah, we know, okay? But
we get it now. After 552 episodes, we're like, now we get it. It makes sense now. Chris, yeah, he does those things.
He plays board games, I hear.
He does. He has played a board game or two. And that's his claim to fame, sadly enough, Will.
Only the two.
That's it. Ironically enough, you could talk about two board games for 552 episodes and still have something to talk about.
I mean, at some point this becomes performance art, but I'm in, so yeah.
That's right. It's that art exhibit with the machine that keeps losing oil but keeps trying to push it back into itself to stay alive. Just like...
Good. Who doesn't like a nice depressing forecast about board games?
It's also hopeful, man. It's hopeful at the same time. We have to deal with our finitude. We're here for a very limited part of our lives. And in that limited part of our lives, you only get 2 games at the table. 2! That's it. Just 2. No more, no less. 2.
It's like a metaphor, man. Yeah.
It's true. Well, for this episode, we are going to the extremes. We brought Will on because Will is the man if we're going to ask about anything that is typically RPG, dice-based, fandom-based. He's got the insight and, of course, the charisma to bring you a fun feature review. For this episode, again, we're talking about dice. We're talking about some Defiance. We're going to talk about tabletop gaming and the revolution that's coming about from all of those different games that hit the table. There's some elements, some feel, some vibe to it all that is challenging ourselves and society at large. So whether it's a tabletop game, a role-play game, or anything else that hits a table, a nice miniature game maybe, in fact, there are some really cool elements of all those things. So it's going to be a really good discussion about some of the great games that you love that really kind of push back. So that's going to be our feature review. A lot to say about that. But before we get into that, there's a couple things upcoming. I guess first and foremost, Will, we're going to be going to PAX Unplugged 2025.
Can't wait. It's going to be great.
Now, where does this line up as far as conventions are concerned? Like, is this one of your favorite? Does it top 10, top 5, top 3? You do a lot of conventions. You're a convention circuit guy.
I have done a lot of conventions. It is one of my favorites. I think now that I've gone multiple times, I have like sort of a a long list of people that I know and like people to see and stuff to do, and I feel comfortable with it, which is a nice feeling. That sort of having a sort of convention home, I suppose.
Sure. I think the first time you came for just the one day, right? Was it the Sunday or something?
Yeah, it was right after COVID, I think, and like the masks were still mandatory and everything, and I came down for like one afternoon or something.
Yes. And we met Derek.
Yeah, we met Derek for the first time there. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
I remember like the first time, like within the first like 30 minutes of me being there, we were watching a game demo that took like 35 minutes, and the guy was explaining his game, and I'm like, I will never play this game in my life because I can't follow the demo. But
that's
this
true.
is a lovely time I'm having.
Yeah, that's one of the. It's a beauty and a horror when you go to one of those booths and they're explaining something to you, and you're just like, no, like I don't know what's going on here. Like I don't get it. Like we've had a lot of those experiences where the demo just doesn't work, and it's just forever. In fact, so you're locked into that little. I don't know, that kind of singularity of time and space where you can't leave the booth area.
Yeah.
And you have to listen to the pitch, man. You got to listen to the pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're stuck. This is your life now.
And then on the positive side, you do talk to some people and you get it right away. So we met Derek from Nomosaurus Games, and we were with Jen back in the day too. And we talked to a lot of cool people. So conventions are fun, I think, generally. You just have to be very careful what booth you approach, because they will suck you in and talk to you, which is good and bad depending on the booth and depending on the game and depending on a lot of things like that. So, but it's an experience, man. It's an experience.
It is. It's cool. And it's also a fun thing to just walk around and see, your hobby out there.
Yes.
There's something to that, I think, that we don't always all get in our daily lives.
No, there's definitely a vibe there. It's nice to see a community like that exists, because we do a podcast and people are listening, but we don't see you. So it's okay. It's okay. We're not actually looking directly at you. But also at the same time, like it's a very big community and a lot of good vibe to it. And that's really what I love about tabletop gaming too, which is that a lot of people are very supportive. So we will sit and listen to your pitch, and if it works, it's a hit out of the park, man. So a little baseball metaphor there for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
We also come up with really good ideas at PAX for whatever reason.
We do.
I was looking forward to this year's.
Yes, we have to develop a couple of those games that we've talked about in the past, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then last year we did 2 workshops, which were fun. Those are big and cool. And this year we're going to be promoting the upcoming Tabletop Scholar Convention this April. So if you ever wanted to play a ton of tabletop games, board games, role-playing games, miniature games, and such, but wanted to have the very good excuse of doing it for professional reasons, this conference is for you, because it's a convention in disguise, but it has educational elements and professional networking on top of which. So April 17th to the 19th with a pre-con on the 16th. Check out boardgameacademics.com. Find the conference section and nominate some games. We all have games that we feel like could educate, provide therapy, build communities. Just go into the website and nominate a bunch of games that you love, and then we'll reach out to the publishers, get those games, and they'll be at the convention, and you could actually go and play games for a whole weekend. And that's a lot of fun. That's really what we want in the end, is play more games. And again, this conference, the intention of it is to get more games out to professional settings. So imagine Anthony in a world where he's not only just teaching games out there, but he's playing games out there too. Somewhere in the world, Anthony's doing that.
I hope.
Yes. Just think of all the weird, contextual situations where you're just like, I don't know, at a lawyer's office or in court or something. And they're just like, now Jenga. And like, why? They're like, it turns out that Jenga is a good way to decide court cases. You're like, sure. Why not? So gaming could actually play a part in a lot of different aspects of your life. Little did we know, but it will. It's going to happen.
The revolution is coming. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what it comes down to, right? We want to get more gameplay and experiential education to the table. So a lot of these things that are abstracted and kind of pull away from our humanity, we want to place a game there so that it can create an opening for more conversation, connection, and fun. All right, well, that's all the things that are coming or upcoming. Stick with us. We'll have an episode next week talking about PAX and such. But before we get into that, we're going to roll some dice, and we're going to roll for preview and let people know what I'm looking at to get to the table. So, Will, I got a game for you here that was sent to me from our good friends at Riot Games here. They are coming out with the game that I most anticipated for quite some time, but also fear because I might get tremendously addicted to it. This is Riftbound. Let's say it again. Riftbound, the League of Legends trading card game, which is a very long name for a game that's about cards. How do you fit that all on a card? I don't know. It seems like a lot. So this is a strategic card game. It's a CCG where champions fight to control battlefields. So if you know anything about League of Legends, it is this just amazing, massive, I'm trying to think, is it MMORPG?
MOBA.
MOBA. Yeah, that's the other one. So it's about getting two teams together of different high-powered heroes, picking up a lot of different equipment, special abilities, running a whole bunch of different lanes. Run your lanes up there to force back the other players. This goes back to the way days of Warcraft 3, where they built that kind of system up, and then it was known as Dota. And there's actually a Dota game and a Dota 2 out there. And then Riot Games came along and was like, hey, let's just, in some people's minds, like perfect it. So you have your minions and your heroes pushing to destroy the other people's nexus, basically their base. And that has been a huge game for quite some time. It's a big game in esports. Even if you don't play it, you probably know something about it. Arcane, the really cool, I don't know, would it be considered an anime? Is it Japanese based? It's animation at the very least. It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
That's huge. I think they have 2 seasons of that, and it's been just loved by everybody. You don't have to know or play the game actually to get involved in it. But they finally have come out with a CCG, collectible card game, or TCG in their case. And basically what you're doing in the game is pretty straightforward. You have a particular hero. That hero is going to give you a special ability at certain points in the game based upon that unique hero. And then you're going to have a hero card. That card is going to become recruitable to go into your deck to be played at a later point. So this is very similar. Well, I don't know if you played the Star Wars CCG.
A little bit, not a lot.
Yeah, it's very similar to that, where you have whatever your hero is, it's already out, but you have to pay enough cards to actually move it into play. So here in this game, it's very similar to that, where the special ability is always kind of available, but the hero character can come into play. And in fact, you could play with a lot of other different versions of the same hero. Some of it's just artwork change, and sometimes it's a special ability. But basically, you'll be able to play with different heroes in your deck as long as they match the certain conditions. Beyond that, beyond your champion card, you're going to have 39 other cards in your deck. They need to match the color of your hero, and your hero is going to have 2 different colors, so there is some sort of matching system. Again, the closest thing that we've talked about recently was the Star Wars CCG or TCG, where depending on whatever your hero is, you can play certain cards to that deck. I mean, again, it's a very, very basic kind of common aspect to it. On top of all that, there are rune cards, and there's 12 rune cards, and basically that's going to be what you're going to be paying to be able to play cards towards a staging area, and then eventually to actually fight in one of the 2 different battlefields. This is a 2-player game. There is a 4-player version of this. I have not tried that yet, but basically 1v1, and basically what you're going to do is put down a battlefield in the middle. Each player plays a battlefield. You're going to play cards to your particular staging area. And again, there's a really kind of basic setup to all of this too. So not too difficult. It's basically setting up your cards, playing your cards out there, paying the, I guess the I would say generally mana, but they're really rune cards here. Playing the rune cards to put them out in the bases, and then some of those runes have to be expended based upon the power of that card that comes out. And then you battle for a particular area, and if you're winning an area, you're scoring points, and you're gaining the benefit of that particular battlefield. Eventually, if you gain enough points on your side, I think it's 8, then you win the match. So it's basically back and forth, playing towards to battlefield, trying to hold the battlefield, and then there's a tremendous number of different activation and specialty cards that come into play, a lot of spells, but hold the battlefield, conquer the battlefield at the end, and then it lets you win that particular round or match of Riftbound. Artwork is great. If you love League of Legends, this is certainly right up your alley. I do love League of Legends. I haven't played it in quite some time, but I used to play it a lot. That used to be my game online. Well, that was
Cool.
a big fan of that back in the day.
Explain some things.
It does. There's nothing like playing a game where you have a bunch of 12-year-olds yelling at you for random reasons and such like that. But to be fair, I played Dota when it was originally on Warcraft 3 as kind of a custom game. So I really love the format of the game. I love the fact that we're getting the CCG here. I do love the characters here. I haven't played enough to give this a review yet, but they're going to have it at PAX, and once I actually get a chance to actually play more fully, I'll come back with a review, let you know. So that is Riftbound, League of Legends trading card game. All right, well, let's roll for some actually play here. You played a bunch of games, Will. Why don't you run us through them?
Yeah, so I played 2 new games that I'd never played before, and one that was sort of an update of a game that I've played before.
Nice.
Yeah, which very fortunate. Happened to go to like sort of a mini vacation with some of my gaming group folks. So the 2 games that we played that I'd never played before were Flamecraft, which is a worker placement game, and Trash Talk, which is sort of a like party game but about communication.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had known about Trash Talk for a very long time because you and I had seen it along with Anthony when we were at Gen Con.
Yes, I remember you had the giant dumpster.
Yeah, they had the giant dumpster on the floor, which was amazing. Their whole booth was like a dumpster and like a big trash can. It was amazing.
That's so funny.
I've been wanting to play it, and then I tried to get a copy from them and like wasn't able to. And then had all these other things to use it from, but finally got to play with my gaming group, and it was a lot of fun. Like it's one of those games that the setup of the game and the premise of it is very, very simple and probably doesn't sound like much until you start playing it.
Gotcha.
So like the way it's set up is you are a raccoon and you are at the local dumpster and you are trying to talk to the possums that live there.
Okay.
Except that raccoons and possums obviously don't speak the same language.
I gotcha.
Because I assume that's just a thing that we all know.
It happens. Yeah.
So the premise of the game is that you are trying to communicate to the possums, and one player is the raccoon and the rest are the possums, and you take random objects that you found in the trash and try to communicate words and concepts to them by matching these random objects to these words.
That's funny.
And it's funny because the words that, some of them are pretty basic, like happiness or, a name of a proper, like a plant or a flower or something like that, right? But some of them are a little more abstract. But the fun of it is it's not just that you're trying to do it round per round and score points. What you're trying to do is eventually get up to using all of the prompts on the table and being able to communicate across the group so well that you get all of them right.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you start with 3, and you match up the objects, and whatever. And if you get it wrong, you get to try to match up the remaining ones that you got wrong with new cards. And it continues like this. If you get them all, you go to the next person, and eventually you start adding 1 object per round.
Sure.
For us, we constantly we're missing them and then having to do another round and all of this. And getting to 10 was incredibly ridiculous. But the funny part was the longer you go in a group, the objects start to take on linguistic meaning
Oh,
that they
jeez.
definitely don't have.
Yes.
So we had like one of the objects is like a finger puppet of a monster. And so in our group, the monster finger puppet became shorthand for anything that was alive.
Okay.
So any concept that was vaguely related to something being living, the person would use the monster finger puppet for. And sometimes somebody would deviate from it and we would get it wrong. And then we would get like, what happened? Like, how would you do that? And it prompted a lot of weird arguments and a lot of like, please explain yourself. Why did you choose this kind of things? It was a great time. I would highly recommend it.
And it comes with the trash? It comes with the little items?
It comes with 10 trash items. There's pairs of them, so I guess it's 20, but it's 10 pairs. And a fun feature of the game is that you can add your own trash objects to the game as long as you have a pair of them, because each player side has to have them. But you could add infinite ones and have an infinitely long game if you wanted, or just select from 10.
So basically the game, like you said, it looks like a kind of just random kind of party kind of game, but really it's about developing a shared language.
Yeah, and that's what we used it for. We had set up a workshop where we used it to talk about communication between groups and how different people speak differently to each other. But it was my first time getting to play it sort of outside of that context and having a really interesting time of seeing how people use language and don't, and what ideas you communicate and how.
Excellent. Very cool. So would this be a buy, a play? What are you thinking? Seems positive.
I think it's a play.
Okay.
I don't know that it would be something that people would want to play all of the time, always.
Sure.
But I think it would be fun, you know.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool, and an interesting concept considering they dragged out a dumpster to their convention booth.
You know, and I really appreciated the dedication to the bit. That's the most important part, you know.
All right. Well, that's trash talk. What else you got for us, Will?
I also played Flamecraft, which was an impulsive game store purchase. It was in my local game store. The art is pretty. They have incredibly beautifully drawn art cards, and it's all about dragons. The point of the game is that you are in this cutesy little village, and it's a worker placement game, but your workers are dragons. And you're trying to match up the little dragons that live in the town with the local shops and help grow the local economy through the power of dragons.
Very cute. I got a chance to play this too, and it certainly is the artwork.
Oh,
and if you get the deluxe edition, it's definitely the production at that point. But it's incredibly painfully adorable on every level.
Almost upsettingly so.
Yes.
The thing that got me, like, I was sitting in the store and I flipped the box over and it shows like some of the cards, and one of the dragons all have names that are appropriate to whatever their thing is, and one of the dragons is a dragon that helps cook meat, and his name was Skewert. And I was like, fine, I'm buying the game. I don't care. I don't know if I'm ever going to play. I'm going to buy it, though.
That pun alone got you the game. That sold you on it.
You know, the combination of puns and cute art just really did it for me.
Did you get the deluxe or just the base version?
I think I ended up with the base version because that was all they had, and then got one of the upgrade packs when we bought it. So I think we had the metal coins.
Yeah, the upgrade packs are great. I mean, there's a super deluxe kind of edition, but it is on the lighter side, so I don't think you necessarily have to go crazy. It's still an adorable, cute game.
Yeah, it was really cute. It's one of those games that I think benefits as everybody plays a first round and really kind of understands what the game is like. But it's really nice. I think the art, it does a long way of getting people into playing the game, but also it's really cute and kind of everybody can have their own feeling of it. And having played it multiple times is one of those things. I felt like I better understood the mechanics. I felt like I could play a better game sort of thing, but it is also sufficiently random enough that, you know, new people win handily, or, you know, luck plays a massive part, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and it basically comes down to contract completion. So you're picking up resources from certain boots and then transforming them to other things, and then you're trying to meet the conditions to get the hearts, whatever they might be. Yeah,
exactly. I think there's a big element too of playing whatever the board is. Yes. And so there's an amount of like, okay, this thing has just been added, which opens up this option for you on your turn. How would you exploit that and use the resources you have available to do that?
100%. Yeah, I got a chance to play this at a convention and really enjoyed it as well. So, Will, you bought this. Is
Mhm.
it still a buy? Would you recommend this as a buy, or is it a play?
I think it's a buy. It was reasonably
Okay.
priced, which was something that was big for me. It's a cute game. I think it's a game that also enough people would play that you could get them in with it being cutesy and having the puns and everything. And I think it's a game that's easy to teach people relatively. I've only played it 2 or 3 times now, and I taught it to a large group of people relatively well, having only played it once.
Sure. I think the one takeaway though I would warn people, it's not a kid's game.
It is not.
Yeah. There really is. I mean, again, kids can play it, but really it does come down to like you're looking at the contracts. You have to think, tactically of like what's available. Can I meet that contract, go to certain locations, pick up the resources, trade those locations, other things, and then try to complete the contract before anyone else does. Like that's a little more cognitive load than most kids are kind of used to.
Yeah, and I think it's even heavy enough that your average, not super big into hobby games person will struggle with some of the mechanics a little bit. Not that they're intense or anything, but that they'll finally piece together something about how the game works 4 rounds in, and it's something that people are going to have to really think about.
Yeah, and in fact, they have a two player version of this coming out soon
Oh,
on
cool.
Kickstarter. So,
There you go.
Flamecraft Duels. So, if you're looking for a two-player version of it, it'll be coming soon at some point. And they also have really cute little puffy animals too. Will, so
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Dang it.
Will, have you played Andromeda's Edge?
I don't think I have.
We brought it. I think we brought it for you to play, and it's like a little space epic battle. Um, and I know that's sometimes not necessarily a fan of yours, but here's the thing, man. They, there's an expansion race that you can play, and it's the Flamecraft race of little dragons.
Well, I'm in. I'm sold.
And they have an enterprise that's I think it's called Fluffy Prize or something like that. Like, and it's all a little cutesy, so you get to play as the actual game. Like it's not a knockoff. It's the actual, like they actually got that expansion into the game. So
That's
um,
amazing. I can't wait.
that's 100% the faction you're going to play now.
Oh
So
yeah, I'm not going to do anything else.
there you go. All right, and what you got last for us, Will?
Yeah. So the last thing, which I thought was funny, I played the third edition of Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which I had played the older versions years and years ago. Happened to be with my game group. We were staying somewhere. One of the guys brings this out. He bought it when it came out a couple years ago and never got to play it.
Yes.
So we crack it open, we do all this stuff, see what has changed and what hasn't. For those of you that have played the originals, the weirdly shaped character trackers with the little plastic knobs are still there,
Mm-hmm.
which, how lovely. But we played the longest game of this that I have ever seen anyone play.
Wow.
It was vaguely distressing.
How so? What happened?
So the way the game works the same as the old one does, where you're investigating this haunted house kind of a thing, and then this crisis thing happens, and you end up having to do that. Someone betrays you. There's a monster, or whatever.
The haunt. Yeah.
The haunt, yes,
Yeah.
and then you fight for dominance. One of you wins, or whatever. The one we drew.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, there's a whole bunch of them, and
Yes.
they're very different from each other, and
Wildly.
they happen at very different stages depending on what kind of occurs.
Yes. So we ended up drawing ours relatively early into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And the one we got was one I had never seen before. And it was entirely PvP. Everybody has to try to murder each other. There is no monster.
Gotcha.
Like, it turns out we were the monster the whole time, I guess, right?
Oh, there you go.
Which, amusingly, the game, like, most of the players were playing the children characters.
Oh, no.
And so the person who drew it was like a 9-year-old who was going around trying to murder all the other people in the house, which was crazy. But the way the game ended up happening was we had, I think, 6 players or 5 players, and 3 of them got eliminated pretty quickly. So 2 people were just out of the game real quick. The third one went out relatively soon after that. And it was me and 2 other players. And that phase of the game took over an hour. Like, it was just us chasing each other through the house,
Yes.
going into the conflict, rolling dice, and we burned every item in the deck. We were down to like nothing left. We had every item either equipped or removed from the game by the end of it. The only way the game ended was I managed to sack items that made my rolls impossible to beat.
Wow.
Because it was like, oh, you're going to have to roll a 20 to beat this. And it's like, that's not a thing that can happen on the dice that work in this game. I think you win by default.
Yes.
It was brutal. It took over an hour of us chasing each other around. I ended up winning. And by the end of it, I was just like, should I just give up? Should I just let them kill me so the game could be over so we could play something else?
It's true.
It was a lot. I had a good time and it was interesting, but when you get down to the mechanics of the game at that point,
I've played this game several times, and it's such a hard game to talk about because obviously you go in there playing as a co-op, and like you said, you each play a character not radically different from each other. You go in there, you explore different areas, you gain different things, you take hits and such, and then a haunt happens. Again, random kind of scenario kind of takes place. Typically it's one person and they have to take the other book away and read what they have to do, and then the rest of you try to figure out how to stop them. And this just conceptually, this could be in fact the greatest board game ever created.
Absolutely.
Because like just conceptually and technically and mechanically, like what you're doing is like, it's just such a wonderful idea. Like you're going into a haunted house. Cool. Just brilliant. And you're exploring. Excellent. You're picking up things and equipping things and you're taking hits, and it's weird and odd. And then all of a sudden the betrayal, the haunt happens. And now it's one of these random things that take place, and it keeps the game fresh and interesting and dynamic. And it could be anybody. So you could play the same scenario multiple times, in fact, and have different outcomes. And it gives you a very cool story of a gameplay. And yet at the same time, depending on how early the haunt happens or late it happens, or the haunt itself and the different situations, it's a bad time. It's like a weird bad time. So like it should work perfectly each and every time, and it almost never does. But also, it's an awesome concept and great game. And I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know. Huh? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's a thing. It's a thing. It's a thing. There you go. It's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah, it was really interesting experience because I played the game before, and I think in the previous times I played the game, it was more of the traditional sort of like one person doing the haunt kind of stuff, and there's like powers and stuff. Because one of the weird things that happened with this game is because it was player versus player, we didn't use like any of the tokens in the game.
Okay.
We didn't use any of the mechanical stuff because it was just us chasing each other through a house. And so I think one of the things that happened is like the mechanics are good for the thing if you aren't only doing that thing. Because when the game was, you're just searching through the house for items and trying to murder each other, every turn was the same. The only variability was, in our case, one of our players kept trying to use the elevator, which the elevator is random and it puts you different places on the map. And that's how he ended up getting knocked out of the game. He knocked himself out of the game because he accidentally rolled it and ended up right next to the 2 child characters who just murdered him.
Jeez.
Which, oops. But it was like one of those things, like when every turn was the same for a whole hour, it could not stand up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of games are like that just because it's trying to accommodate, you have a system trying to accommodate different outcomes. So it's not straight down the middle. It's always going to be wonky as far as that's concerned, because how else do you do it? Right? Like there's been a bunch of games like that. So yeah. I don't know. And there's been Baldur's Gate. There's been the Scooby-Doo one, which I think is brilliant. It's about time they did the Scooby-Doo one. But I don't know if there's a way to refine this formula or the game mechanics any better to make this actually work every time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I know there's the legacy version of it,
Yes.
and so I don't know how different that is. Some of the players and I talked about that after the game was done,
Yeah.
about how maybe if it was a game that people were consistently committed to playing, and you would experience more of it, and so
Sure.
not feel particularly, one kind of way or the other about it. Because one of the things was, I think some of the people there probably would only play that game once, and that was the version of the game they played. And you know maybe if you were experienced at it, you would avoid certain things, or you would try to do a different haunt, or you would agree to play differently somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think certainly there could be some elements of like, hey, this is if you got this one, don't play this one based on these conditions that you're currently at. Like if there was a little more like this is what's happening, ergo these are the ones that you might want to choose from, just because reasons
Mhm.
or number of players too plays a big difference into that too. So overall a great game, but
Oh
on the
yeah,
challenging side. So would you recommend people buying this or just play it, or maybe it's just too random and just dodge it completely?
I would say play. I think I like the game overall, and I like what it is, what it could be for a group of people. But
Uh-huh.
I do think that, cracking it open, a bunch of people have never played it before. There is a really high chance, or at least a decent chance, that it could turn into a weird experience.
Yeah, same. All right, well, that's all the games that hit our table this week. Now on to our feature review, which, of course, is Dice, Defiance, and the Tabletop Revolution. So, Will, I guess probably the best way to kind of open this discussion a little bit is to talk about what we mean when we talk about resistance in tabletop game terms. There's a lot of different variations of this, but I think primarily what we're talking about is just the overall narrative of people playing a game, whether it's a role play game or a tabletop game, and like the thematic concept of it all is, looking at resistance or being part of a resistance.
Yeah, one of the things I think about a lot is the amount of stories and the amount of themes and things in the hobby that directly relate to literal or figurative or fantasy rebellion and resistance and evil empires and organizing of some sort of movement or something like that.
Sure. And I think it's surprising too, because from the tabletop perspective, for so many years, and we're only starting now over the last probably 5 years or so, so many Euro games have been built upon the idea of imperialism,
Mhm.
colonization, and general exploitation of native people, of workers. Even if you play a worker placement game, like, am I going to feed my people? Maybe not. Right.
No.
So, being, having that kind of power fantasy in a tabletop game, and again, a lot of role play games as well, and even miniature games too, and war games. Like, there's something comforting about the power fantasy. And now, over the last couple of years, I think there has been again a revolution of such, of like, and maybe that's not so much of a revolution, but maybe it's kind of finally come to the surface in a financially viable way. Where, like, if you look at Star Wars, right, that's a story of a resistance, right? It's pretty simple, straightforward, and now that's kind of like getting into the lesser known IPs or generic kind of games where, you know, rising up the, all those underdog stories that we've, held with, or Joseph Campbell's like, man's search for meaning, where he's, comes from nothing, goes through a struggle, and comes out the other side changed. That has obviously captivated us since the beginning of time, but now tabletop version. How
Yeah.
about that, right?
Yeah, and I think especially even just thinking about what the face of the industry kind of looks like, because I think Star Wars is a really good example that Star Wars on the face of it is, good versus evil, rebellion versus empire, but also some of the popular Star Wars products in the space haven't always necessarily done exactly that in a narrative way. Like it's been like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, right? And it's like
Yes.
that's cool, but it doesn't necessarily have that same implication versus like I know, for example, I played Star Wars Edge of the Empire, the TTRPG, where it's
Sure.
like it is kind of explicit in that like there you are on the edge of the empire because it's sort of a resistance, rebellion, criminal, kind of everything is oppressive, and so you have to live in a kind of a way. And I think seeing also that trickle down from other franchises that have come into the tabletop space, thinking about things like, for example, Avatar, Last Airbender, where they
Yes.
made the TTRPG, which, yes, it is an IP that exists somewhere else, and there's been a lot of attempts to do that. But the nature of Avatar, The Last Airbender as a series and baked into the RPG is that there's like conflict between power and the little people and the people that have authority misusing it and things like that.
I don't know what you're talking about, Will. There's no war in Boston, say. Okay.
Absolutely, you're right.
But it's interesting that that's becoming more and more prevalent kind of thematic core of so many games out there.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's, you don't have to go far to say that that's somewhat reflective more and more in society. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's been something I've really noticed in the RPG groups that I've been a part of. All of them, in some way, have some rebellious, revolutionary component to it, whether that's a part of the story or not, which is something I think is kind of interesting because I've seen groups even kind of create that in a world that doesn't really have that built in for it, even.
yeah, well, it was interesting when the pandemic hit, and I was like, nobody in their right mind is going to want to play the board game Pandemic for a very long time. And
Yep.
in fact, the board game kind of blew up. The
Mhm.
sales went through the roof because I guess on some level, people wanted to play out that scenario that was happening in the real world, but with some element of hope, to have a chance to change things, to make things better.
Yep. I think it allows people a sense of realism, but also of a sense of control. Not like playing Pandemic is actually going to change the pandemic that's going on outside, but it feels actionable. It feels like you can wrap your mind around something, even in a metaphorical sense.
Yeah, and what again, we play tabletop games so much, and it's so much a part of our lives, and it's just kind of interesting to find that if we take a look at our shelves, so many of those games are based on that kind of concept of wanting to have control, wanting to have a hopeful, optimistic view of the future, despite everything else that's in that particular game that's saying, nope, not so much. Right. And, you have like all those dystopian kind of games, whether they're role play games, war games or miniature games or tabletop games, where it's just like everything is bad, right? It's all
Yep.
bad. Even if it's cyberpunk, it's still really bad. Like you're not seeing so many solar punk games out there where everything's
Yep.
great. Everything's bad, so therefore you need to again bring hope to the table, which is a running theme in like a lot of games out there now more than ever.
Yeah, and I think part of that makes sense to me, as in the industry responds to what people want and what's going on in the world at the time. And, maybe there's a very real way that people want to see hope and want to feel inspired to those things. But I think also it's people making games about what they know. And sometimes the things that people know are distressing, kind of messed up things with a tinge of, but it could be better, or I could see it being different.
Sure. And you and I have both used tabletop games a lot in our work therapeutically to help people, but also I think there's the everyday need to have that kind of therapeutic catharsis, to fight against the forces of evil, whether it's a video game or a tabletop game, and come out the other side. And it seems a very human project that we participate in. And it's just again, if we take a look at our games, there's so many games that allow us to do that, right? Like you said, you mentioned Avatar, we talked about Star Wars. Obviously, D&D just generally is that concept that there's a bigger world out there and you're a tiny little part of it, and there is tasks that you must undertake to kind of face it. Or even we talked about Betrayal, right? There's a haunt that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Go stop that bad thing from doing that bad thing that they want to do. And even if you're a little tiny child in that world, you're expected to keep up, and you're expected to do some good and not just sit there, man. You just can't sit there, man. You got to do something.
Yeah, just give up, man. You gotta do it.
I mean, do you find that when you play when you DM a lot of your role play games in your regular groups, is that like a general thematic concept, or you know, implementation of just like a hope mechanic in what they're trying to do or what they're trying to fight against?
Yeah, I think it's not something that is always there mechanically exactly, although, maybe it should be.
Yeah,
But I think one of the things that is consistent is players really expressing some version of themselves and wanting to see that affect the game world, right?
sure.
And see the world be responsive to that, which is something that I've always really incorporated in a lot of the games that I run, that almost everything has consequences, even if the consequences are invisible. Which is really interesting because then you see, legacy games and metaphors for change and games that, literally change once you play them and are never played the same way again. It's something that I've always seen a lot of in tabletop RPGs where, you might play a game and then there's a time skip and here's this thing that happened while you weren't at the keys, right? Or here's the way the world changed. I played in a game for one time for quite a while where we played one campaign and then our next campaign was in the aftermath of the world of what had happened in the first campaign, right? And I see that a lot in tabletop RPG stuff. And now starting to see those similar kinds of things in just out and out regular tabletop games as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because when we talk about games, no matter what game it happens to be, we tend to focus on the victory conditions or winning a battle, and then, but really, can, that's not necessarily what people are looking for, right? Like, it's the actual play of the game, it's the experience of the game, it's the challenge of the game, like
Mhm.
whether or not you win or lose a particular game. Like if that was if that was the joy that people got out of a game alone, if that was just it, if that was only the the rationale reason, I don't think it would be such a popular hobby, right? Like I think
Oh
it would just
yeah,
fall off the edge, so to speak.
yeah, and it was something I thought about playing Betrayal. Actually, was I remember vividly what it was like to sit there and play those last few turns where I was like getting close to winning and doing all this, and
Yeah,
it wasn't necessarily that I was going to win. Like I didn't care whether I won or not,
yeah,
but it was a very immersive feeling, right? And I think the best parts of the hobby are the parts that happen during the game, not necessarily who wins or what the objective was.
yeah. So we did an episode on 539 earlier this year, and we did games that fight the power. So we talked about specifically games that, from the tabletop, from a board game kind of perspective, really shake things up in a really positive way. And in fact, Will, we just talked about on a most recent episode when we were looking at Essenspiel, the big tabletop convention in Germany, and they had a lot of hotness that came out of that as well. And one of the funny things that we've talked about was when we're looking at a lot of tabletop games, we're looking at games that really might have an impact on the industry. And sometimes it's really hard to figure out what games might actually do that. And there was a really small trick taking game that actually took, again, little small publisher, little small designer, nothing fancy as far as that's concerned. And you have all these big games. You're like, oh, cool, this giant game with all the miniatures, and this giant game with all the miniatures, and that giant game with all those miniatures. And it was this small little card game that actually brought people in to, fight the power, so to speak. And that was the thing that really kind of was very surprising about that, because why would that be something that would have the hotness kind of blowing up a little bit? But it did. It was, again, one of those really kind of really cool areas of expertise and experience that people were really looking forward to. So, again, it's just a fantastical idea that there's so much more. And again, this game, very simple, text rich, but it's that very revolutionary kind of aspect to it that people seem to be now more invested than ever before. So, what about on the role play side? Games that again, revolution is not always versus the evil empire, but sometimes games that are revolutionary are just games that are just setting yourself up to understand and learn more, grow more, be different. So that kind of diversity kind of element where a marginalized people are not always a marginalized people because of the evil empire or because of government control. Sometimes it's societal, sometimes it's personal, this kind of stuff. So are there any RPGs that you're familiar with that kind of like push back a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting ones. One of the things I think about too is, as you kind of alluded to, the idea that sometimes they're just being a game about this concept or this group of people or
Sure.
something like that makes a big difference in the sense of this isn't a thing that would normally happen. And so now we're here, we're talking about this, we're really going from this person's point of view, right? And I think that's something I've thought about a lot, especially in the sense of games like Thirsty Sword Lesbians, for example, is a really good game. It was an award-winning game, but it's also a very specific game about an experience that somebody had in their life that was very different from mine.
Yes.
And writing it into an RPG that allows people to be inside of that experience, right? And I think there's a way in that you might think of some of the games that are coming out or the games that are being published or are able to be published these days are a sort of activism in themselves, right? They're games about stuff that in the older days nobody would have played, right? So somebody bought me Dialect, which, if you're not familiar, the TTRPG about the death of a language. And it's like, that's an activism in itself, like getting people talking about languages and how they become, they flourish, they die, which, like, if you explain that to somebody, in a world of, they only play fantasy games that have dragons and, paladins and things like that, it's not the same, right? But it's been really cool to see those kinds of things and see who can be out in the space and publish, because I think also there's an inclusivity in that if there's more and different people sharing their ideas at the table, more and different ideas come to the table, which means more and different games come to the table.
Yeah, and I think that's a societal marginalization that we're pushing back against, because we need to have more exploration of who we are as a humanity, so that even if it's not your version of self and role in society, it provides color and dimension to who you are. So maybe you're not a thirsty sword lesbian, but
Not
maybe if you play that game, it would maybe give context and color to your, let's say, heterosexuality, for example, right? Like maybe there's some element of like, oh, I understand me better. I get a sense of, of my sense of self and other people out there in the world. And I think that's a lot of fun. I mean, if you're not playing games that are about different scenarios and different situations and different people and different backgrounds and different orientations, I think you're missing out on all the fun that's out there for who we are as humans. And I really would welcome people to those tables, because I know, like, even back in the day, like one of my favorite games, because it's just a wonderful Euro game, is called Rococo. And it's about the Rococo period, is this opulence period of history with all these beautiful dresses and gowns, men wore beautiful outfits and statues and fireworks and all this kind of greatness and stuff like that. And people are like, I don't want to play that. I'm like, it's so much fun. And again, obviously a very problematic part of history, considering the opulent wealth that they have versus everybody else. But nonetheless, fun game. You should play that. So, and again, I think that's a little bit of a shame that so many of our games tend to be overly geared towards a particular hard conclusion, because you do lose games. You do lose adventures. Things do not work out, just like in real life. Yep. And I think there needs to be more mechanics and more victory conditions that are not just like, you go and fight dragon. Did you kill dragon? You win. You did not kill dragon, you lose. Like, sure, there's some aspects to that, but like, where's the experience element of life in that? Like, why am I not getting experience points for even trying to do that, right? I think that's what games really need to do more of, right? Like, I dare to challenge, right? I played Spirit Island and I pushed back versus the colonizers on the island. I tried to push back against the pandemic that was wiping out the planet. Like, that boldness deserves to be rewarded. That hope and persistence, I think that's one of those things that, like, it needs to be more in games. Like, it just can't be like, and then, like, that was a cool secondary thing you did.
Yeah, and that's something I think a lot about too as I'm playing other games, even outside the hobby. Like I had told you I was playing The Outer Worlds,
Oh, yeah.
and the game does a really nice job of letting you use your skills and have experiences and giving you literal experience points for that. But that doesn't always go well. It doesn't always work. It doesn't lead to anything always. And it made me think about one of the best gaming experiences I've had semi recently was we were in sort of a very hopeless situation where we were playing very poorly and there was probably very little chance that we were going to succeed at doing the thing we were supposed to do. And we also did a lot of really good and powerful stuff that really changed the campaign in that, tabletop space. But it didn't feel like it at the time. At the time, it felt like it was hopeless, that we were just we're walking our way to the last bit of this to get our butts kicked. And, that there was something to that felt like a really lively time in the game. And we learned about each other and we learned about our characters, even in failing overall.
Yes. And I think that's definitely something more. Because again, it may not be something that you are gaining just out there in the world. Because I think the world certainly is really trying to condition us to follow a specific path.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody as a career counselor for so many years, I can't tell you how many people have felt boxed up to a point of like very hard to breathe and live. So I think one of the wonderful, beautiful things about games is it kind of opens us up to new ideas and concepts. And sometimes it's basic stuff like, hey, I like math. I never knew I liked math. Math is a thing I can like, or logistics, or just a lot of other fun stuff out there that's just really reflective of who we are in the world. And I think games do a very good job of allowing us to empathize with other people and then see possibilities, right? Because I think the most fun thing when people ask me, why do you love tabletop games? Is I love making interesting decisions, right? Like the game is like, you got to do this. I'm like, cool. I totally want to do this, but I want to do it in this kind of way, and then like, I want to add my flavor to that. Is that possible? And when it's possible, I think that's really what makes the game amazing. If it's the same thing over and over in a very abstract style, I kind of disconnect from that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. One of the things I thought about when we were talking about it is paying attention to sort of the meta level of things and
Sure.
the sort of the thing about the thing, which is really interesting in the tabletop space because there's a lot of different meta levels. There's sort of the industry and what it's doing and the world and what it's doing. But one of my favorite sort of out there tabletop RPGs that I ever played was Companion's Tale, where the whole premise is you guys aren't the heroes, you're the hero's entourage, like reflecting on what it was like to be with the hero and on what events happened with the hero. And that's the game, is like you're storytelling about this, and you have differences. People experienced events differently because they're different people.
Yes.
And that's a really interesting, like, that's real. That happens in real life. And it's not particularly a super interesting thing as you would describe it to someone, but weaving a game with mechanics that make that part interesting does make it work.
Absolutely. Well, I'm trying to think about specifically, has there been a game for me that has really challenged my making interesting decisions? Because I think that's really important, because we all live in a kind of a really restrictive construct of like, these are the things you have to do and these are the reasons why. I think the first one that really kind of tipped my interest a little bit was a game called Agricola. I don't know if you ever played Agricola, Will.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a game that a lot of people call misery farming. because basically what you're doing is you're running a farm and you're trying to feed your family while trying to score points by producing plants and animals and fruits and vegetables, not fruits actually, but vegetables and such, and doing a lot of other fun stuff based on like skills and abilities that you gain. So I'm trying to remember how far back this goes when I actually played the first game. If I was, I didn't eat meat, so I was a vegetarian or a vegan at the time. I'm vegan now. So when I play a lot of tabletop games, well, I try not to eat the animals. If I can avoid eating the animals in a game, I'm happy. Now, when you play Agricola, it's like you will eat the animals or you will lose, man, because there's a lot of points on raising animals. So I raise a lot of animals. I don't eat the animals. And playing Agricola, there's actually there's a vegetarian card in Agricola. Now, you may not get it or it may not come into play, but despite that, I've played a games of Agricola where it's challenged my sense of morality. Now, I know it's a tabletop game and you do things in tabletop games like, I don't know, murder whole planets. Like, that's a thing. But in Agricola, it feels a lot more personal, right? I have a family. I'm trying to feed them. I'm trying to score points by getting things to market. And when I play that game and I don't murder any animals and I'm able to provide for my family and score points because I made interesting decisions, I feel empowered by that because the system was built for me to score points this way and I went a different way. Or there's a game called Endeavor, I think the first and second edition when it came out, and that's a game about colonization, imperialism, and that kind of stuff could be overlooked because it's very abstracted. But there's a slavery mechanic in that game, and like if you don't do slavery, you're at a disadvantage. But if you don't do slavery and you win that game, you feel awesome. Like there's an extra level of like pushing back rebellion because again, you had to think outside the system to come to a victory condition. And I think for so many people out there, whatever your life is, whatever your job is, if you can think outside the box and come away with a victory that's essentially more ethical and more reflective of who you are, and not just buying into the system that can be and often is very restrictive and marginalizing, damn it, man, you have like crushed so many different things, not just the game's victory conditions. And that really it's a very inspiring moment for me when I play tabletop games, no matter what it happens to be.
Yeah, I love that example too. I was thinking of a game that like really gave me the feeling of, locating myself and doing all of these things. And the thing I thought of was Veiled Fate, which my first time was actually playing with you and some other people. And one of the things that I felt really cool about was like it gave me the opportunity to make a lot of choices about how I wanted to play the game in a way that it was really nice to go around the table and see there were people that are just like, no, I just want to play the normal game. And I could pick to make the game much more complicated for myself and express different parts of myself by playing the game and feel really immersed in that, but also not feel any like weird negative self-referential stuff about the type of game I was playing, right?
Yes.
And then get over with and feel really amped up about it during the game, but then the game ends and it's like, wow, everybody played that game really well. I had such a good time, versus like feeling antagonistic towards it or feeling icky about how I had played the game. It was really cool to be able to kind of pick that out and then play that all the way through and then, go on with my day.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. So we really want to encourage everybody out there when the games at your table, the games on your shelves, like try to think about victory conditions, both personally and in the gameplay, that can be beneficial for you and other people, to think about yourself differently, to engage other ideas. Because again, like, how many games have we played where like, oh, I know how you win, you do X, Y, and Z. But like, if you can find a different way, then you're really challenging the system, the game system. But also it allows you to open up new ideas, new concepts of self and about the world and society, and to resist. And again, the resistance isn't necessarily like black and white, but the resistance is growth. And I think that's what tabletop games, whatever tabletop game it is, come up with some new and innovative ideas and ways of seeing the world, and then act on those ideas, not just what the specific the rules say. And again, that's what I always love about RPGs. Like, oh, there's a bunch of goblins that are attacking you. What do you do? It's like, all right, I pull my sword and I swipe at the goblins. But like, what if you could think of like some like a way around it, and like, or maybe trick them or like befriend them or something like that. Like, I mean, for a DM's point of view, like that's fun, right? Like there's something else that could be done at that table that could be just as dramatic and dynamic, but from a different point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would think of it as sort of finding ways to sort of radicalize your games, if you want to use that phrase. And like,
Yeah, I love it.
not necessarily only by political ideology, but like hope is a radical thing to do. Like
Yes.
change is radical, like personal growth is radical. But also not necessarily feeling like you have to play the game that's given to you, like your Agricola example, right?
Yeah.
Like the game is given to you that way. There are things that allow you to do that, but you could choose not to, or you could take what's offered to you and try to do something different. And sometimes that goes really poorly and everything is terrible, but sometimes that goes well, or sometimes even, it's neutral. And that's a useful thing to learn about the world, that you don't always heroically succeed as the revolution, but you don't also fail and everyone dies every time either.
Yeah, and I think it's just that attempt that's helpful, even if you do have to play within the lines. I think it's the attempt that really is inspiring. So, like at the end of the game of Agricola, you might have a little more points than I do, but I have the most animals on my board, and they're super happy to be there. And honestly, I crush at Agricola. So, like, my animals are happy, and I will bring down your farms. I'm just saying it's going to happen. So
it's not within strictly this scope of this game right now, but it's going to happen. That's the meta.
Yeah, and I think the more you practice, like you said, Will, hope, right? That there could be another way, that there is another way, and that you don't necessarily have to adhere so tightly towards the parameters that you've been given. I think that allows you, both in tabletop life and the real world, to strengthen, to level up in a lot of really essentially important ways, and to be successful. Because I played Agricola a bunch of times and lost because I did that, but eventually I learned how to win, and I learned how to win to a point where the traditional system is not as effective as my system, and I get to play that game, and I love that. And that's great about tabletop gaming in all aspects.
Yeah, and I love that sense of sort of mastery and building that comes out of that, right? Because that's not something we all get to feel in our lives all of the time. We don't always get to feel like we're doing that. And sometimes the world doesn't evenly offer us things that make sense within that system. And, as someone who's worked with young people for a long time, especially young adults, like, you aren't going to be offered that all the time. Sometimes you're going to have to make it. Sometimes you're going to have to go find it, and that will look different for each person. And if you've never experimented with what that could look like, that's going to be a really long journey.
It's true. Well, thank you all for taking a little bit of a different road for this feature review, and hopefully that you take up your games in a little bit of a different way, because it makes you better, especially as a gamer and as a person in life. All right, everyone. Until next time, this is Chris.
This is Will.
And we'll save you all a seat at the table. Take care, everybody.
Hey there, Hugh from Podderation here, and if you like today's show, why not have a listen to the All Things Nintendo podcast? Hosted by Brian Shea, former director at Game Informer and lifelong games journalist, the show explores the ins and outs of gaming's oldest company and one of its biggest, featuring interviews, featuring reviews, featuring everything you want to know about the world of Nintendo. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website at podderation.com.